is Dianne Langston, and I am a real estate broker in Fairfield, California, the principal broker of Quality Real Estate Services. And I am here this morning with my favorite and only escrow officer, Miss Chrissy Sittinger with Placer Title Company.
Hello.
Hi, Chrissy.
Hello.
Hi. We are so happy to come before you this morning. We want to talk to you about the care and feeding of your short sale escrows. In Solano County, we have more distressed listings and sales at this time than any other kind. Short sales in particular require advanced training and skills in negotiation and organization. I'm proud to be here with Chrissy this morning. And Chrissy and I are going to talk and go over some questions of things that are very pertinent to your escrow and give you some information that you need. Now, as brokers, we work very hard to protect and preserve our escrows because not only is it how we are paid, but it's how we fulfill those promises that we have made to the seller, and who, when we close this escrow, the seller is going to be relieved of the stress of that loan, and they're going to be able to move from that property, which has been burdensome to them, and the buyer is going to be very happy because they get their keys, and all of the service providers are going to be paid. Getting to a successful closing requires much diligence, patience, and knowledge when you're working on short sales. Part of the knowledge as a broker that you have to have is to choose a team of related experts that will help you serve your clients' needs. I have found Chrissy to be the point person for my escrows. Her knowledge of lender requirements, IRS procedures, title issues, and her work ethics make her a perfect choice for me. We're going to discuss some issues for you right now. I'm going to ask Chrissy a few questions, and she's going to give you some answers that will hopefully get your short sale escrows closed. Now, Chrissy, we work very hard to get approval letters. And once we finally get that approval letter, we send it to our escrow officer as well as to the other agent and some other parties. Chrissy, what do you do with that letter?
I instantly review the letter to make sure that the short sale lender has approved all the terms that have been written into the purchase contract. So I'll instantly review the letter versus the HUD one that we prepared versus what's on title to the property. And I make sure that all of it lines up. And if it doesn't, I'll definitely instantly notify the agent so adjustments could be made either via a contract addendum, or we just have to make sure that everything's lined up.
Absolutely. And that lining up, Chrissy, is critical because if the terms of the contract and the terms of that approval letter don't match, we will not get to closing, which is our destination and where we want to go. So reading that approval letter is critical. Reading it thoroughly, not only for you as the broker, but your escrow officer must also read the letter thoroughly to know what's being asked of title. So, Chrissy, now let's move on to the HUD settlement statement and knowing where to put items. Tell us a little bit about that, because many times we have changes requested for us to the HUD, and they may want something moved from line 703 to line 201. How do you handle that? What's the importance of that?
Well, every bank has their own requirements, so we try to remember through all these transactions which bank wants what items on which line. So I will personally try and head that out as much as I can when I'm preparing the HUDs and put the items on the line that the banks require. But unfortunately, every bank changes their requirements consistently. So we just try and head out as much as we can. But for the most part, most banks will have their own requirements and ask for things to be adjusted on the HUD, and we'll just do it as fast as we can and get it right back to them.
That's wonderful. Being prompt is really critical in short sale processing. I had someone to tell me, Renee Smith, as a matter of fact, who handles short sales out of Florida, that for every 1 day you delay a signature, it delays approval of your short sale by 2 days. And so that time just keeps moving further and further out. I know that Bank of America recently in a short sale training told us they were changing the location of some items on the HUD settlement statement. They wanted it moved from down here to down there. Previously,
Yes.
These are things we never dealt with as a real estate professional in sales, but now in short sales, the rules of the game have kind of changed. And that's why working with another professional is so very important for you. Now, Chrissy, let's move on to unrecorded deeds of reconveyance. How do they delay the closing if they are not addressed early in the transaction?
Well, because title companies are issuing a new policy of title insurance, any recorded deeds of trust on the property or any liens have to be released before we can allow it to close. So some old lenders can have a process of up to a month to issue a reconveyance on a loan that might be already paid off. So it's very important to work on any kind of releases instantly as soon as the file is open because of that process. IRS liens take 45 days, mortgage deeds of trust can take up to a month. So the quicker that is started, the quicker obviously it won't delay the closing.
And I had to learn that the hard way. My clients say, oh, I paid that loan off. Yes, but it does not reflect in the public records. So brokers, it's very important that you read that prelim as soon as it's issued, checking for any unrecorded deeds of reconveyance. Your client should not have 3 open deeds of trust in very, very large amounts when the house is only worth $200,000.
And unfortunately, in the crazy refi time 5, 6, 7 years ago, things went too fast to where the reconveyances were not prepared. So we're suffering the consequences now and having to clean all that up.
Thank you, Chrissy, for sharing that information with us. I really appreciate you giving us the benefit of your extensive knowledge of short sales. And now I want to move on to ask you a question and talk about verifying that all parties on title will be available to sign the grant deed and that they are willing to sign. I know I've certainly had situations where someone called me about selling the property and maybe the wife didn't want to sign or the husband didn't want to sign or couldn't be located. As well as I just recently closed a transaction where one of the parties on title was deceased. So Chrissy, how does that affect my closing? When should I be addressing this? And what do you do when one of the parties is deceased?
Oh, okay, it's definitely a good question. Whoever is recorded on title to the property is required to sign all documents, contract, escrow, etc. So if there is a case where one of the parties is deceased or will not cooperate, we will have to address that instantly as it will delay the closing. If a party is deceased, then we need to obtain the death certificate, the original county certified copy, and record what's called an affidavit so that we can remove that party from title. And then if the other person will not cooperate or a divorce situation, it's when it gets a little trickier, obviously, and we'll have to play it case by case, but most likely either a court order would have to be obtained if the other party is unwilling to cooperate with the signing.
Okay, and this is really important because when we get those short sale approvals, traditionally they give you about 30 days or less to close. And believe me, brokers, that is not the time to be trying to go to court and trying to address any kind of issues with who is going to be who's going to be signing the closing documents. This needs to be done up front from the very beginning. So you need a knowledgeable escrow officer and you need to be knowledgeable as well so that you all can work in partnership to move that escrow along. Now, Chrissy, let's talk about post-closing responsibilities for agents. Post-closing responsibilities for us generally consisted of us cashing our checks. Now we have a lot of new duties as a result of the distressed sales that we're involved in. We're not used to this, and many lenders impose these requirements upon the agent, and I've even seen emails where they're going to send your funds back if they don't get the documents that the agent needs to upload through Equator or need to fax or send to the lender. So tell me how important this is, and tell me as agents how we need to handle this and be aware of what our post-closing responsibilities are.
Definitely. Anytime the short sale lender approves the HUD or in their letter, they will give you a list of what's required after closing. And if it's not given to them within their time period, they will reject the wire that has been sent to them and try to unwind the sale. So we do that as the title agent. We'll read that letter, and the instant it's closed, we will email the documents to you guys for you guys to forward into the bank. So it's really critical you get that on the same day, which is our practice to do. As soon as it's closed, we send you these items. And it is very critical because if the bank does not receive them by their required time, like I mentioned, they will reject the wire back to us and try to cancel the sale.
Well, brokers, you know that we don't want that to happen because we do not want our commission checks unwinding.
No.
We worked so hard to get them there in the first place.
Yes.
Thanks, Chrissy.
You're welcome.
Moving on, let's talk about understanding the process for partial release of IRS or other state tax liens. I didn't even know, brokers, that you could get a partial release of a tax lien until my favorite escrow officer, my only escrow officer, told me, oh, they'll release this lien. So, Chrissy, tell me a little bit about this and why it's needed and why we've got to address this early on in the transaction, in the escrow transaction. You need to ask your client also if they have any tax liens.
Yes. Fortunately, the IRS and the state have made it pretty streamlined to release tax liens from a property through a short sale or distressed sale. Most people used to think anyway, that they would not do that. The IRS has a 45-day time period to review a request for a partial lien release on a short sale, which means they will get paid zero funds to release this lien from the property. However, the lien still remains against the owner. Mm-hmm. And so 45 days from gathering all the information they require, which is a little list, the appraisal and title report and HUD, et cetera. So it's best to start that from the start, so before the short sale is even approved, because they will take the full 45 days. The franchise tax board's a little quicker. I believe they're 30 days or less. The EDD, I've had one that's taken a week or two. So yes, it's definitely important to start that. And to this date, I have never seen the IRS or state say no. So it's just the process of going through it.
That is good news. Great news not only for us as brokers in the care and feeding of our escrows, but for that borrower that needs the seller that needs to get themselves relieved of that property and the stress that's associated with that distressed sale. Chrissy was the first one that made me aware of this, and she also gave me the document with the list of requirements that the IRS mandates is sent to them. So ask your escrow officer if she's ever had a partial lien release, if she knows what the document is, and if she can assist you. But more importantly, don't forget to ask your sellers if they have any outstanding tax liens. This is very important and critical to getting your escrows closed. Moving on, now that we've gotten all of that taken care of, let's talk about a timely closing. And I want to say to you brokers, don't assume that extensions will be granted once you get that approval letter that tells you the period of time that you have for closing. Extensions can be difficult. Chrissy, what happens if my approval letter expires and I want you to go ahead and close escrow?
Well, we cannot close escrow on an expired letter, so we would have to get an extension or approval from the bank in order to close the file. So sometimes they'll extend it. We have seen them say no, not as much these days, but banks typically want their files closed when they ask it for it to close, and especially within that same month for their book purposes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can't rely on them saying yes, they will extend, and sometimes they will charge penalties or of some sort to the seller or the agent.
Chrissy, thank you so much for taking time away from your desk, out of your day, to make this film with me so that we can share with other brokers who are out there trying to serve the public in these short sale situations, in these distress sale situations, the information that they need in order to effectively work for your client, to bring value to the transaction, to bring people to the transaction that can help your client accomplish their objective, and that is to relieve them of those distressed properties that are causing so much difficulty for them. We look forward to you tuning in next time and to us having another opportunity to share information with you.
Definitely. Thank you as well.
Thank you, Chrissy.